Hello and let's talk about the coronavirus disease or COVID-19. The WHO has declared it a pandemic, marking a fresh stage in its spread. Countries across the world are taking drastic measures to ensure that the disease can be contained. It's clear that the coming months are likely to see social chaos as political, social and economic life is said to be affected to a great degree. We'll be talking about some of these aspects, but first, here are some updates on the spread of the disease. As we mentioned earlier, the WHO declared it to be a pandemic. The World Health Organization terms the spread of an infectious disease to be at a pandemic stage when there is a gradual increase and sustained spread to the general population across the world. The organization has been extremely reluctant to make such a declaration because of the economic ramifications, among other things. But nearly 120 countries have reported at least one confirmed case of an infection, making the declaration all the more necessary. The total number of cases is now over 126,000 and the numbers continue to rise as new infections are being discovered every day. The number of deaths is around 4,600 globally. Nearly 68,000 have recovered from the disease, which is over half the infections so far. In India, the number of reported infections has climbed to 73 after 11 new cases were discovered. The US and India are among the countries which have imposed strict travel restrictions. In India, travel and tourist visas, along with visa-free travel for OCI card holders, has been suspended till April 15th. Only those with long-term employment visas and diplomats are allowed to travel. The US has announced a travel ban from the 26-country Schengen zone in Europe. The UK is excluded from the ban, as are US citizens. While making the announcement, US President Donald Trump claimed that Europe had failed in tackling the disease, even as experts have pointed out that the US itself has failed and is likely to face a dangerous situation soon. Italy has tightened its countrywide quarantine. All shops except for supermarkets have been closed. All non-essential departments in companies, bars, restaurants and hairdressing salons are also to be closed. The death toll in Italy rose by 196 to 827 on Wednesday. Italy has seen the second highest number of deaths after China. China itself has seen a steep decline in cases and deaths. According to the country's National Health Commission, China has passed the peak of the disease. There have been only 50 new cases in China, the lowest since the outbreak began. The pandemic continues to have an impact on markets too. Stock markets crashed in Asia on Thursday following the US travel ban announcement. In India, the Sensex tanked by over 3,000 points. Airline stocks have especially taken a hit. To talk more about this, we have with us D Raghunandan of the Delhi Science Forum. Raghu, thank you for joining us. Raghu, first of all, generally for our viewers and for us to understand, what does it exactly mean when the WHO declares that we've reached a stage of a pandemic?
The WHO makes this determination on a global basis.
Right.
So it doesn't specifically refer to impacts in particular countries. So it refers to the fact that this is now a global phenomenon,
Right.
that we can no longer think of it as regional hotspots alone, but that it requires global attention and a global way of addressing the issue.
Right.
That's the main thing. Whether it's 100,000 or 125,000 does not really determine whether it's a pandemic or not.
Right.
As you rightly said, the WHO has been restrained about this, has not been wanting to use the word since it may create panic. But when a large number of countries have perceived it to be an epidemic inside the country, it's time to declare it a global pandemic.
Right. So, but do you actually see that there is a global effort in terms of combating the disease? I'm especially asking this because there is a lot of recriminations happening. Trump's statement, for instance, yesterday blaming Europe. The Europeans are not happy. They've responded pretty harshly in terms of that. Many countries imposing travel restrictions, no coordinated sort of approach so far. So
very difficult to do because nations are bound to respond to this given their own particularities and sensitivities.
Right.
So there is an element of nation-specific response to this. Trump's case is a peculiar case because Trump always wants to project things as having been caused not by him, not by the US, but by these ugly foreigners.
It's not America first in such issues, such situations.
It's not at all. It's America last, and it's America the sufferer in this. So he's, in his latest public speech, which was meant to reassure the nation, has actually caused more anxiety in the US. He constantly referred to it as a foreign virus, as a foreign problem being brought into the US by foreigners especially coming in from Europe, who he claimed has failed
Right.
to tackle the problem. There is an element of truth in that, but the failure has largely been caused by the fact that there's a lot of travel between Europe and outside Europe, and there's a lot of travel within Europe from one country to another. However, the point must be made that countries are now trying to do screening at airports as one way. India has now gone the further extent, like the US has, in preventing further passengers coming in. Now, this is not really a nationalist response of blaming the foreigner, if you like, but it's reflective of the trend of the disease. In India, till now, there has been no community spread or a recorded case of community spread. There are one or two cases which are suspect cases, but nothing has been proved. So all the cases of coronavirus infection testing positive have come into this country from outside, whether brought by non-Indians or Italians or whatever, or by Indians returning from abroad. So this has to be taken into account. The other countries where this has been noticeably responded to have been Japan and South Korea. And both are blaming each other for banning the entry of the citizens of the other country. But then South Korea and Japan are the two highest cases in Asia outside of China. And it would be natural, in a sense, for each country to perceive a threat is coming from here, so let's try and block that. And I think that's what's happening.
Right. So to delve a bit more into the case of the US itself. So there's been a lot of debate, discussion, controversy over the administration's approach, the lack of proper tests that are happening. The numbers are still quite low. And there is a general perception that the US may be a few weeks behind Italy, but might actually end up in a similar situation. So do you see the possibility of that?
Very likely. Because the number of cases reported in the US has been low, but most public health experts in the US are of the opinion that cases reported are low because not enough people have been tested. So there would be people wandering around where the disease is incubating, and then you will suddenly start this to see this coming to light in a spike of cases. In Italy, for example, in the beginning of January, there was one case. By February, it was a few hundred. Between 1st of February and the 1st of March, you had 8,000 additional cases in Italy. It just spiraled out of control because you didn't know what was incubating. You hadn't done enough testing, and then it has spiraled out of control. The same, very similar situation is present in the US today. And surprisingly, for the economically strongest or richest country in the world, a lot of this is due to two factors. One is a lack of sufficient testing kits in the US. And the second has been the response of the US administration in trying to downplay. So they don't do tests because they don't want people to think that there's a big problem. If the numbers go higher, then that's another problem. And that was Trump's response to the cruise ship parked outside the US, whose passengers are now being brought in under quarantine conditions. But Trump's response was, if they come in here and we test them and there are 500 positives, that's going to send our numbers up. So he was only concerned with the fact that numbers will go up, not with how the problem is to be contained.
And it doesn't help that, unlike, for instance, China or even to some extent Italy, it's a question whether the US is going to be able to mount a nationwide, campaign, considering the way its political structure is also organized.
That is one. And secondly, the way the testing structure is done in the US, a lot of tests are conducted by private labs. but the private labs don't report to the national center,
Right.
the disease control,
CDC,
to the CDC. So that's another problem. People may have been going to the private clinics, getting tested, coming out, no reports of this going out.
Right.
And the center has not, the federal government in the US has not initiated measures as it would under a national disaster,
Right.
for example,
Right.
of ensuring or compelling coordination of all this decentralized
Right.
information floating around. And it is not really difficult to establish testing facilities in different parts of the country. India has now got more than 50 labs which are testing for COVID. So there's no reason why that should not be the case in the United States. The other factor which I think is causing a problem in the US is Trump's own messaging
Right.
to the country. He's been holding rallies when other people are cancelling theirs. He's been going around shaking hands when the advisory is not to do that. People in Congress, people in the administration have themselves contracted the virus because of these bad practices. And Trump's messaging has been, let's pretend that everything is all right, and things will disappear as if by a miracle, he said in one of his earlier speeches. So that's not helping the problem either.
Right. And to return to our earlier question, isn't at a global level, so are the coordination mechanisms that exist today actually sufficient to deal with and say now a pandemic of this sort, or say do we need is there a possibility or the requirement for say a new kind of set of coordination mechanisms and structures in such a situation?
Yeah. Well, there is certainly a need for that, considering past experiences with H1N1, with SARS, with swine flu, with Ebola, with so many of these epidemics. The problem is there is no global body which has authority to ensure coordination.
Right.
They can advise, the WHO can help. The WHO requirements on this by a 2005 decision in which all countries are party is that all countries will supply information to WHO. That's it.
Right.
There is no further obligation on the part of national governments to obey or not WHO guidelines. For example, I checked this just this morning. WHO guidelines still say we do not advocate restrictions on entry or departure of travelers from or to countries.
Right.
Their argument is that this is misleading because you think you have tackled the problem because you have done screening at airports, but the screening will not show temperatures if it is still incubating, and you may come in and wander. So you think you've done a good job. And many of our cases in Kerala in particular have been because people have leaked through the airport screening system and have then wandered out into society carrying the problem with them. So WHO's point here is, rather than doing a ban, you should engage in tracking and contact tracing of individuals after they have come in as being more effective. But this doesn't prevent nations from entering an overcautious mode, if you like, and preventing, so that at least one avenue is shut for it. So that's the way it is. I mean, one hopes that there would be a more effective system for international collaboration, but at the moment, it follows an advisory rather than a mandatory route.
Thank you so much, Raghu. In our next story, actor Rajinikanth held a press conference today to talk about his political plans. The superstar has been on this will he, won't he phase for quite some time, leaving his fans, political observers, and even his rivals confused about his actual intentions. If people thought that today's press conference would provide some clarity, it did not. Instead, he made a number of statements, including ruling out being a chief ministerial candidate, which has left observers very stumped. We spoke to a Tamil Nadu correspondent, Neelambaran, on the implications of the press conference. Here is what he had to say. Thank you, Neelambaran, for joining us. So, could you first start by telling us what exactly Rajinikanth said at his press conference today? There's been a lot of speculation over his political entry. So today was considered a very vital press conference. So what exactly did he say?
Yeah, as you said, it was it was highly expected press conference, and he highlighted and he proposed three different points for his political entry. The first one was he was not in support of the political or structure of a party. He accused that the parties in Tamil Nadu, particularly the Dravidian parties, DMK and ADMK, have over 50,000 party posts across the state. So he thinks that this is unnecessary, and these people come into play during the particular party is under rule, and they involve in different sorts of corruption and all those stuff. And the second point he made was he will be allocating the party post or the government post to 60 to 65% of the post to the youth, particularly. So if this is considered, most of his followers at present will be disqualified even before his party is being started. And the third one is he want the party and the government to be separate, and he doesn't want to occupy any post in the government, including that of the chief minister. These are the 3 points which he made, and he want the people to accept these 3 proposals. And at a time when the people are ready for this kind of suggestions, he will get into or join the political mainstream.
Okay, so it's basically Rajinikanth making an offer to the people saying that these are my conditions. If you accept it, I'll enter politics.
Exactly. So based on his conditions, the party would be started, if at all, if he is going to start one.
So this is actually a very confusing statement because he has first of all very clearly said that he will not be the chief minister, which would have dashed the hopes of a lot of his supporters. And secondly, in the event of such a new party even gaining power, he claims that he will be, I think he said that he would function as some sort of opposition leader to his own government. So which is all very idealistic and sounds great and is actually a great plot for a movie. But on the ground, do you think there is the possibility of, say, this party, if it's founded, actually gaining strength?
Actually, no. Last week, he had a meeting with the district secretary of his fans association. And at the end of the meeting, he made it clear, and said that he was disappointed with one particular thing and he won't disclose that then. And he disclosed it today. That is purely his stand on the post of the chief minister. His fans and most of the office bearers want him to be the chief ministerial candidate. And with his announcement today, all their hopes have been dashed. So such kind of a move, as you said, the movie plot and all those things, it will work out like what he has made in different movies. And his dialogues repeatedly coming to the fore in the films right from 1996, when I was in my school days. So the same status continues even after 25 years. So there is no such, and of course, most of the party members who are more than 50 or 60 now, his fans, to be precise, I presume that will move out of his flock and join other political parties where they can, boost their own prospects in that particular political party. And in reality, these things have very little chance of getting materialized.
Right. And another key question is his relationship with the BJP. So we know that at various points he has taken stands which are very close to that of the BJP. There is a lot of speculation whether there is some kind of secret alliance or whatever. And there was also a lot of political commentary which suggested that the BJP had hoped that he would be the face of some kind of a front. Yeah. So do you think that this relationship is likely to continue and that the BJP will benefit from his support?
Actually, in the December 2017 meeting, he spoke about a new term which is not known to Tamil Nadu or any other political fora so far, the Anmiga Arasiyal, the religious politics. And with that, he made it clear that he was very close to, or he is very close to the BJP and their kind of politics. So, given this today's announcement, it looks like he wants to, create some sort of confusion or division of votes that would apparently favor the BJP and the alliance partners of BJP. So this is his stance repeatedly in the CAA, NRC, and all those things are in line with the BJP stand. And he was very specific on supporting any Muslim, to be precise. if they are affected by CAA or NRC, but he never spoke a word after the Delhi riots or anything. So he silently or directly is in support, or he wants to support the BJP, which he had already done in several elections. So this could definitely favor BJP in getting some kind of votes or even seats if he is going to proceed in this way.
And what about the two major Dravidian parties? Do they see some kind of a challenge or do they face some kind of a threat from Rajinikanth? Because in the press conference, he explicitly said that this is a good moment after the passing of both Jayalalitha and Karunanidhi. So, considering their current situations, do they face any kind of threat from the this new forum that might come up?
Not sure. These two political parties have always, close with Rajinikanth at one time or other. In 1996, the DMK was, taking the support of Rajinikanth. In the further elections, he openly said that he voted for the ADMK. But given the present condition and his age and his unorganized setup of the fans forum and the yet to be formed political party, they will definitely not consider him as a big threat as of now.
Right. Thank you so much, Neelambaran, for joining us. That's all we have in this episode of Let's Talk. We'll be back tomorrow at 3 p.m. with the major news developments of the day. Until then, don't panic, wash your hands regularly, and keep watching NewsClick.